This is the office of the New York Medical Examiner. The people who come here to work every day are faced with a monumental task of identifying nearly 3,000 people who were murdered in the World Trade Center attacks.
That's great. Maybe when we get it downstairs, we can make an ID from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the largest forensic investigation in history, and leading the troops is Dr. Robert Shaler, a man who's led 2 tours of duty and over 3 decades in the field. But nothing could have ever prepared him for this. Today, amidst the somber work, there's some good news. They've identified one more victim.
And it's got another piece identified by fingerprints and another by dental. So we've got a bunch of extra pieces we can give to this family.
Great.
Dr. Shaler admits he's obsessed with identifying every single person who was killed. His office has become the last outpost of hope for families whose loved ones weren't recovered in the Trade Center rubble.
Career-wise, it's the most important thing I've ever had to do.
It's getting more and more difficult to do this. Some of the victims were vaporized by the intense fires. Most were crushed by tons of concrete and steel and will never be found. Machines now hold vials of precious tissue samples. Families were asked to bring in toothbrushes and razors to get DNA.
What's the likelihood ratio? They're both negative?
Yeah, they're both negative.
Shaler says they've cataloged over 20,000 body parts, but some are so deteriorated the DNA is difficult to read. He and fellow scientists pioneer new techniques every day. One works like a copy machine, duplicating and enlarging the DNA so a match might be made. Still, it's an overwhelming and at times impossible task.
It's been kind of described as building an airplane while you're flying it, and that's really pretty much what it's been like.
After the attacks, bodies started arriving by the dozens. A makeshift morgue was set up under tents. These workers had seen just about everything, but this scene was surreal.
I spent some time in the morgue part of this. I've never seen anything quite like that. And it wasn't the fact that the people were fragmented and mutilated. It was the volume, the sheer numbers of them coming through that gets to you.
This keeps them going. Thank you letters covering the walls. They're from family members who appreciate the work these men and women are doing. Families are encouraged to visit and ask questions. Unfortunately, many times, there simply aren't any answers.
The families who identify where we have an identification, they usually have questions such as what was recovered, and will you find more of him or her? And those kinds of questions we answer to the best of our ability.
And this is an office where it's not unheard of to see someone cry at their desk.
This looks like it.
Elaine Marr says despite the mountains of paperwork, the victims aren't simply names on a page or numbers on a chart. They're lives and families, dreams and hopes that came to a violent end. She showed us a book she keeps by her desk so she can put a face with a name when a match has been made.
She was somebody we identified recently, and she was a flight attendant for American Airlines. She did a lot for, during the initial hijacking. She called somebody and informed them of what was going on, and she still hadn't been identified.
The anniversary is going to be emotional. The last day at the digging at the World Trade Center site was emotional, but we knew we had to. We weren't finished. We knew that, so it was sort of anticlimactic. The anniversary date's also anticlimactic because we're not finished. We have a long way to go.